Victoria's wildlife is one of the things that make the state so special. Seeing native creatures in unusual places is a daily occurrence, and you can also find animals that remind you of home. Whether it bounces, trots, or just spends its days sitting and eating, you're bound to be left enchanted.
Now, if you're going to come to Australia, you're going to want to see the two Ks, kangaroos and koalas, and there's no better place than here at the Healesville Sanctuary. Healesville is in the Yarra Valley, just east of Melbourne, and thanks to the natural bushland setting, you can get up close and personal with over 200 species of native animals, the largest collection of Australian wildlife in the world. It's also home to the Australian Wildlife Health Centre, which gives you a behind-the-scenes view of a real wildlife hospital.
This little man, he's had a limp. He's had an anaesthetic. Fortunately, no broken bones, but unfortunately no obvious reason either. So it may be a little bit of rheumatism, although he's only about 11 months old.
Well, Healesville Sanctuary has only native Australian animals, not like a lot of other zoos, so it's a great place for tourists who want to come and see our native animals up close and personal. We've got a whole range of animals here, from mammals to birds and reptiles.
We've got Milsom, the platypus here, and Milsom's a 5-year-old male platypus. He was hand raised here because he was accidentally dug up out of his burrow when he was a little fella. He was only about the size of your palm, fitting the palm of your hand. Platypus are quite difficult to see in the wild, so unless you're very lucky, it's often easier to come to the sanctuary and actually see one.
These kangaroos are actually Kangaroo Island kangaroos. They're a subspecies of the western grey, being found on Kangaroo Island, which is south of South Australia. It's rather cold, so they've developed the dark, thick brown coat that helps to keep them warm, especially during winter.
Tasmanian devils got their name from Europeans. When first settlers came over and convicts settled Tasmania, they started to hear all sorts of lovely sounds and screeches and screams from the bush. They heard them well before they got to see them, and what they thought they were hearing were demons and devils. They are threatened, or they are endangered at the moment. There's a lot of work being carried out on them in a captive situation, also out there in the wild as well with research, and Healesville Sanctuary is part of that.
Well, I'm joined now by Kelly and Ella. Ella's the koala, so Kelly, tell me about her.
Ella came in at about 8 months. She's about 20 months now. Unfortunately, Mum was hit by a car and Ella was on Mum's back at the time. She had a couple of injuries of her own, and she was looked after and hand-raised by one of the keepers here.
So tell me a couple of myths about koalas.
Okay, well, one of the most common ones is koala bear. They're not actually a bear at all. They're not related to bears. They are a marsupial, so they have a pouch. Another one is that they get drunk. Now, that's not true either. The problem with eucalyptus is that it's a very low nutrient diet. So koalas are expending almost as much energy trying to get the nutrients out from it as they're actually getting back from it.
So they're actually just really sleepy all the time?
Yeah, pretty much.
And the Healesville Sanctuary is just one example of many in Victoria where Australian wildlife thrives. There's an abundance of opportunities to marvel at the indigenous species in their native habitat, and a great way to do this is with the expert help of a guide.
Both myself and my wife Lizzie, who are the co-owners and managers of the property, we actually are also scientists, so we do guided dust walks. So our guests usually come and arrive after afternoon tea. We take all our guests out on a guided dust walk, which usually takes about 2 hours. So we go out onto the property. We have 165 acres here. We then, I suppose, let people experience and see wild kangaroos and wild wallabies in their natural environment, doing their natural behaviour. And we're just sort of there, I suppose, just to give that little bit of extra information so that people really can get a bit more of an understanding and an appreciation of what makes Australia just so magic.
This is Rove and Conrad. These two are babies number 209 and 210 that the centre has raised and successfully rehabilitated and released back to the wild populations.
All travellers like to hear of a little-known gem, something that makes them feel like they're in on the secret. Well, the Great Ocean Road's contender is Tower Hill Reserve. The Great Ocean Road runs to the southwest of Melbourne and features some breathtaking scenery along the way, but for those with a love of nature, this place is heaven. It sits inside an extinct volcano and it's a haven for free-roaming wildlife.
The experience that people get when they come here is a park in its natural setting. It's a park in Western Victoria that you can be sure to see koalas, kangaroos and emus. The vegetation here has been replanted since 1960 and has been replanted specifically for koalas. The gums here are one of the favourite foods of the koala, and they overpopulate on a regular basis and have to be caught and taken out of the park to other parks, otherwise they'll kill all the trees.
Animal welfare is a priority for Australians, and the many reserves and parks bear testament to this. Education through close contact is also a high priority here at the Ballarat Wildlife Park.
This park specialises in native Australian animals. So we've got over 100 free-roaming kangaroos, we've got ducks and swans, geese. We've got wedge-tailed eagles, echidnas, wombats, all that sort of thing. A lot of our animals, we try and keep them really tame for a lot of close contact. Saltwater crocodiles are not tame, but we do create a really close show, and we do that by sticking to a perfect routine. If you're from overseas, you really want to see Australian native wildlife because Australian native wildlife is so unique.
Now finally, an unmissable and unforgettable highlight when it comes to wildlife in Victoria is this place, and it's called Phillip Island. It's a 90-minute drive southeast of Melbourne and most famous for its little penguins.
So the penguin parade here at Phillip Island is an absolutely magical experience. They are the smallest penguins in the world, and they go out to sea early in the morning, and then crowds of people gather at sunset to watch them waddle across the beach from a day's fishing. And it's very funny, it's very endearing, it's just an amazing experience.
From penguins to seals at the aptly named Seal Rocks, and the best way to get there is on this thing, the rib, or the rigid inflatable boat. For those with a more relaxed demeanour, there's always the regular boat cruises to the rocky outcrop, but whichever method you choose, the experience when you get there is something you'd only normally get on television.
Well, the fur seals out at Seal Rocks, which is about 1.5 kilometres offshore at Phillip Island, are something that you just really have to see to believe. There's over 25,000 fur seals jumping in the water, lolling over the rocks. It's just an amazing experience again. And those seals are, it's just one of the largest colonies of Australian fur seals in the world that you experience out there at Seal Rocks.
And finally, there is an Aussie icon. At the Koala Sanctuary, you can wander the treetop boardwalk and view them at close range in their natural habitat.
We have wetlands, we have miles of walking tracks. So from wild ocean beaches through to tranquil mangrove inlets with boardwalks, you can go bird watching, and just lots of the wildlife experiences that you can have anywhere on the island. You might drive past a wallaby or an echidna crossing the road. It is just an amazing place to come and visit.
And that holds true all over the state. It's a place where you can find animals that capture both your imagination and your heart. In Victoria, you're bound to see familiar faces in familiar places, but also iconic creatures in the most unpredictable of spots.